Deku and Ochaco finally revealing the truth about each other and about what really happened to Toga. There are only 2 more chapters left in the entire MHA manga after this important chapter, but there are still so many unsolved mysteries, so let's talk about it. If you guys enjoy my MHA content and you want me to keep it going, leave a quick like to let me know. And if you want to make sure that you won't miss my reviews of the final 2 chapters, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. The previous chapter continued the time skip / aftermath of the major villain war, and we got to see how the wider Japanese public is reacting to what happened. We got to see what happened to a number of significant characters, and much of the chapter revolved around Deku delivering Shigaraki's final message to Spinner at the hospital. As Japanese and international heroes work to rebuild the country after the destructive villain war, the public is generally shocked and outraged by the actions of the villains, and most of them believe that Shigaraki was an evil monster who deserved to die. Now, that is of course a perfectly normal sentiment for the average citizen to have, given everything that Shigaraki's done. But that is not a sentiment that is shared by former League of Villains member Spinner, who viewed Shigaraki as his first real friend and a hero to people like him. Spinner blames himself for not doing more to protect Shigaraki from All for One's devious plan, and he hates the fact that eventually the entire Hero Society will just forget about Shigaraki and the League of Villains like they never even existed. In an attempt to prevent Shigaraki from being forgotten, Spinner vows to write a book about the symbol of fear and the League of Villains. He wants to make sure that future generations will know about them and what they've done. Now, I don't know if Spinner is hoping that the book will actually convert anyone to their cause, since they don't really have a clear-cut ideology or anything, and now that Shigaraki's gone, they don't really have a leader either. My guess is that Spinner just wants to write something that will appeal to fans of like true crime, people who don't necessarily sympathize with the League but are interested in crime and the dark side of humanity. So the book probably won't recruit new people and revive the League, but it will just ensure that Shigaraki and the League are remembered and that the past never dies. Deku has no issue with this, and he even tells Spinner to make the book into a comic book, since that will presumably make it more interesting and more engaging for readers. Deku also says that he personally will never forget Shiggy and the League. The last chapter also showed us the pathetic fate of Chisaki, aka Overhaul, who is now crying like a baby in prison because he disappointed his surrogate mafia daddy. The chapter ended with the new first years arriving at UA and swarming Shoto and Bakugo, since they are all huge fans. Many of these fans are fangirls who are desperately trying to get their contact info and get selfies with them. Both Shoto and Bakugo are confused by what's happening and try their best to get away, and then Bakugo unsurprisingly freaks out and calls for all the fangirls to be expelled. The new chapter starts off right there at the UA, with the first year fanboys and fangirls explaining why they are such big admirers of Shoto and Bakugo. They remember them from the sports festival and from what happened during the villain war, so to them these guys are practically celebrities. Ida steps in between the fangirls and Bakugo and Shoto, and he tells them that they can't just chase the second years around the school because Bakugo and Shoto are still recovering from the wounds they sustained during the war. The fangirls then proceed to apologize. Meanwhile, the other Class 2A students don't seem to have any sort of fan base of their own, so they're just kind of commenting on the Shoto and Bakugo situation. Kaminari is jealous that the girls are not interested in him, and I'm sure Mineta is as well. And Deku says that Bakugo was also largely ignored by girls in the past, so he probably is not used to this kind of attention. Shinso says this surprises him, and he believes that Bakugo secretly likes the attention, but Mineta replies that it's not surprising at all. Shinso wasn't in Class 1A, so he doesn't know his classmates that well. But everyone who went to class with Bakugo knows how aggressive and standoffish he can be, so he wasn't exactly a ladies' man up until now. Now, even though the other students don't have nearly as many fans as Shoto and Bakugo, we do see one first-year boy address Deku and tell him that he was inspired when he saw Deku fighting in the war, and that he wants to be just like Deku. Deku is kind of surprised by this, and he doesn't know how to respond. The whole thing reminds him of his conversation with Spinner, since to Spinner, Shigaraki was the hero that inspired him. Deku is thinking about what it actually means to be a hero to someone, and how to rise to such a big challenge and accept such a big responsibility. But while all of this is happening, and while most of the 2A students seem full of excitement and energy for the new year, Ochaco is the exception. We see her just kind of sitting there with a neutral expression on her face, as if deeply lost in thought. This is similar to the behavior and expressions we've been seeing from her ever since she was treated for her injuries at the hospital. The mystery of Ochaco's behavior and what it really means for her relationship with Deku is actually the most important aspect of this entire chapter, so stay tuned because I will get back to this. The chapter then shifts focus to Aizawa and Present Mike, who are discussing the fact that a lot of reporters seem to want to interview Class 2A, presumably because of the events of the war. Like I said, a lot of them are now like celebrities. Aizawa refuses to give any interviews. He just wants his students to be able to be normal high school kids again, and he doesn't want them to worry about being media personalities or celebrities. We then get a glimpse of the massive reconstruction efforts going on throughout Japan. Efforts that the students are actively helping with. We get to see Deku back in his hero costume again as he joins the rest of Class 2A and some pro heroes like Genist, Fatgum, and Edgeshot on a work site. Edgeshot is still that little stringy thing that he was at the end of the war arc, although he seems to be getting bigger and now he has arms, so he's not just like a snake. Bakugo asks him if he will stay like this forever, and Edgeshot implies that he's gonna become better than ever before, so presumably he is slowly going to grow back into his human size and regrow all of his limbs. I have no idea how this process actually works. It definitely seems like his quirk abilities are pretty broken compared to like the average quirk user, but it is what it is. We then see that some local civilians are also helping to clear the rubble and rebuild their homes along with the heroes. The civilians appreciate all the help they've been getting from the heroes, and they bring some delicious and carefully prepared food for the heroes and hero students to eat. One of the civilians says that unfortunately his farm was destroyed in the war, and after hearing that, Deku says sorry. But the man replies that he doesn't blame Deku or the heroes, and in fact, after seeing how bravely the heroes fought, the civilians feel motivated and inspired to work hard in order to rebuild what they lost. The civilians want to play an active part in the rebuilding effort. They don't want to just leave everything up to the heroes, and this might seem like a small detail, but it is actually extremely important. A big problem with the hero society of the past was the fact that everyone just relied on heroes to do everything for them. And then when there were no heroes around to help, as was the case with young Tenko Shimura, those people like Tenko just fell through the cracks because no one else stepped up to help them. So the fact that the civilians are now stepping up and taking an active part in making society better, rather than just relying on someone else to do it for them, is a big deal. This type of attitude, if it catches on widely, could ensure that the new hero society will be more successful than the old one, and that less people are going to end up falling through the cracks. After that, another bus full of students arrives. Cementos is the teacher in charge of the first years, and they have arrived to apologize for the commotion they made when the first years arrived to UA. And they are also there to help with the cleanup and rebuilding efforts. We again see that boy who is a fan of Deku proudly stating that even though they are new students and don't have their provisional licenses yet, they still want to help. In general, there is a lot of enthusiasm and positivity going around among the civilians, the hero students, and of course, the heroes themselves. This is because the heroes and hero students fought so hard and so bravely, and since the entire world watched them in real time as they fought and sacrificed for the greater good, everyone was inspired and motivated to follow in their footsteps. We then see Ochaco again, and her face isn't showing a lot of emotion, but she does appear to have a very faint smile on her face. She says that she is relieved to see that everyone has become more optimistic after the events of the war, and then she says that she is going to go off on her own for a bit and get some food. However, both Deku and Tsuyu seem to sense that something is off about Ochaco's behavior. She isn't doing anything overtly unusual, but she just doesn't seem like her normal self, and even the smile that she gave her friends seems to be kind of fake. Now that the war is over, the UA students are not confined to their dorm rooms at night, and so that night Deku realizes that Ochaco isn't there. According to Tsuyu, Ochaco said that she will be going home for a while, but then she hasn't been answering her messages, which is obviously odd for someone as friendly as Ochaco. We learned that back during the final moments of Toga's fight with Ochaco, the battery of the reporter's camera had run out. So there is something that everyone missed about this fight. Now, I assume that what the cameras missed is the moment where Toga actually sacrificed her own life to save Ochaco by transferring her blood into Ochaco's body. So essentially, among the public, Toga is still considered to be just a villain who died in battle. But in reality, she only died because she gave up her own life to save Ochaco. So yeah, I can definitely see how Ochaco would be feeling weird and conflicted by all of this. We see Ochaco standing alone on a hilltop overlooking the city. She is glad to see that things are going back to normal. The city looks normal again after that horrible war, and that's a good thing. She genuinely likes seeing everyone smiling and being optimistic again, but she herself cannot be that optimistic. She doesn't want to talk about it because she doesn't want to ruin everyone's mood, but she has been deeply troubled by what happened to Toga. She remembers Toga's final moments, how she was crying and smiling at the same time. And she reveals that she has been suppressing the pain from her wound, referring to the wound on her stomach that she got during the battle. She then begins to cry. Now, I assume she doesn't mean that she literally has physical pain since she was discharged from the hospital. I assume she means that she is pained emotionally by the fact that Toga died to save her, and no one even knows, and everyone just thinks that she was an evil villain who deserved to die. The chapter ends as Deku climbs the hilltop, sees Ochaco, and calls out her name, Uraraka. Deku has gone out of his way to track Ochaco down. They are now alone, so now is finally the time to settle their feelings and talk about the fate of Toga, who, as far as we know, did end up dying in the end. I am always hesitant to conclude that someone is actually dead in a shonen series unless we get a conclusive statement or a funeral or something, but from the way that things are going, it really does seem like Toga died and Ochaco has been feeling terrible about it. It seems that, much like Deku, Ochaco can't just move on and be optimistic so suddenly, knowing that people actually died during the war. Even if they were villains, Shigaraki and Toga were still people, and they died during their battles with Deku and Ochaco. Even though they didn't directly kill them, Deku and Ochaco do feel partially responsible for their deaths. And that isn't something that's easy to deal with psychologically. That can really mess with a person's mind, and we have to remember that these are teenage high school students. They are not battle-hardened war veterans. But okay, Deku and Ochaco are finally alone, and they finally both look like they will talk to each other about what happened, and about their own feelings for each other. Drop a comment right now and place your bets. Are they going to confess to each other? Are they going to stay friends? Or are they gonna just keep acting awkward towards each other forever? There is one thing that I'm really curious about though. We know that Toga always wanted to be close to other people. She even said that she wanted to consume other people in order to become one with them. And once she took in the blood of someone else, she was able to transform into them and take on their characteristics. That was the whole thing with her quirk. So, I wonder if when Toga gave Ochaco her blood, some part of Toga was actually transferred into Ochaco. Could a part of Toga still be in there somewhere, which would allow her to at least symbolically stay with Ochaco and Deku forever? Especially if Deku and Ochaco end up becoming a couple. Assuming that Toga really is dead, then this would be a pretty poetic end for her. She loses her life, but she lives on inside of Ochaco, who then proceeds to be with Deku, the boy that Toga also loved. I'm really excited to see what this conversation between Deku and Ochaco is going to bring. I'm also really hoping that we're gonna get answers to all those unsolved mysteries like Deku's father and that unknown villain that was introduced back a few chapters ago, because we only have 2 chapters left. We are running out of time rapidly. If you guys are looking for more epic MHA content to watch next, check out my full MHA playlist, link on screen and in the description. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and if you want to make sure that you won't miss my review of the last 2 chapters, please subscribe right now and hit that notification bell.